1968, you went back to the Olympics, but you didn't have such an enjoyable time there. What was it the heat and or the altitude rather?
No, well, they haven't been back since to altitude.
No.
And that was the first time they went to altitude. We knew very little. We didn't go to climatisation. We did go. The British board sent a few of the team to Font-Romeu, just for a short time. But it was cut short because there was trouble between the Spanish and the French or something, so we had to come back home very quickly. So Mary Rand and Lillian Board and Lillian Board was there, and we all came back, but we found it very, very hard. I don't remember a great deal of my race at all.
Going back to the training in your day, we spoke before we came on camera about Ron Hill being one of your rivals, or not one of your rivals, one of your contemporaries. And I remember reading about his story when he'd read in the magazine about someone training twice a day and having a sleep in between. He laughed off that idea because he used to hold down a full-time job. You were the same. I mean, you were working in a factory in Birmingham.
Yes, I worked for the BSA. In Birmingham.
You run at lunchtime, I think was the
story. I ran at lunchtime, and I ran in the morning, and I ran at lunchtime, and on occasions, well, the morning runs were mostly in the winter.
But it must have been an incredible fatigue to be on.
Not at all. No. We just done it.
You were just young and you believed. And
that's right. My coach used to make me run to work in the mornings. Mostly in the winter in boots. Right. I didn't like it very much, but that's what he said. And I never doubted him once. That's what he gave me to do. But I used to see him every day because he used to work quite close to me. So I saw my coach every day. Right. He came and.
So to talk about your coach, I know a little bit about what you've already told me. How did that coaching relationship
start? It goes back to school again. It goes back to school, and the school had the school championships, and then they had the county championships. And I ran for my school, and I finished second in the mile race. And this gentleman came up to me and he said, "Have you ever thought of a career in doing athletics?" Like a young boy, he said, "Oh yes. I didn't tell him that I loved football. I liked football. And that's when we first met, and we were together all through everything then. And I did like football. I played for the school. I played for Birmingham Boys.
Right.
But when you had an injury, I found personally that I missed athletics. So the choice came.
Yes.
I had to choose between one or the other, so I chose athletics.
And you were born in Staffordshire in Great Worley.
That's correct. Yes.
When did you move to Birmingham? Was that through your father's?
Yes, my father was a miner, and we came to Birmingham when I was extremely young, I believe. And
right. So you were more of a Brummie than
a Staffordshire person. Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And you must have visited the Isle of Man at quite a young age too, did you? Because even in your peak, I believe you still hold the record for the Peel Hill race.
I do indeed. I do indeed.
What brought you to the Isle of Man originally? Your first visit.
It's where this is a place. This is a time when I think I ought to introduce Marina to you. In those days, in the late 50s and 60s, there wasn't much work in the Isle of Man, so people had to go if they wanted to go to England to get a job. So Marina lived in Port St Mary, and she, like other girls, went away to England, and she worked for the BSA as well.
Right.
So That's how we.
So it was.
And we came home
visits.
to meet her parents.
Yeah.
We used to come out before I lived here. We used to come over 2 or 3 times a year to see
Right.
see.
Did you do many races on the Isle of Man? That's the one I know you.
I remember running a mile. Yes, I did use. I used to run at Ongan Stadium, and I ran at Castle Rushen a mile, and the likes of the longer distance races, which I would have loved to have done. It was always at the wrong time of the year, right, for me. But I enjoyed the peel race. I enjoyed that very much.
And when you moved to the Isle of Man, your employment changed quite a bit. Tell us about some of the things you've been doing in your time on the Isle of Man, for those who don't.
When I came to the Isle of Man, we came over, and it was when the herrings were quite prominent, and it was massive attraction to everybody, tourists as well when they came, like myself. And I ought to say really that the BSA had folded up then. They had finished, they had closed. So I came and I got a job working on the quay with the herrings to start with. And then I went to sea for nearly 14 years, you know. Loved it. Totally different to anything I've done in my life before, but I loved it. I worked for a great skipper. He's passed away now, sadly, but George Summers, he was a superman.
And then you got involved in recycling?
This is through athletics. There was 2 brothers, John and Tony, and they wanted to start a recycling depot in the Isle of Man, and they asked me, would I run it, would I manage it, and I was delighted to try it. It was something totally different. I loved it. It was quite a challenge, but we got it.
And you've been retired a few years now.
I have been retired a few years.
Family's the #1 priority.
Absolutely, and my grandchildren, yes.
How many children and grandchildren have you got?
I have 3 daughters, Michelle, Andrea and Lisa, and they both have 2 grandchildren each, so I'm absolutely thrilled and to be with them.
When you first came to the Isle of Man, I think you were a bit anonymous. I don't think you got involved straight away in the sport, but you then became very involved as a coach, and really I think it's fair to say that middle distance running on the Isle of Man really took off in those early 80s. I remember in particular when with the likes of Chris Quine and Graham Clark were exchanging. It was almost like our version of Cohen Ovett for a while, but I think you had quite a stable of runners. And I know even people like Dave Newton look back affectionately at the times when they used to train down in the south and so on.
Yes, from my home, yes.
How did that all start, and why did it fizzle out?
I can't remember really how it started, but Chris and Graham and Dave Newton, Steve Kelly, they were fantastic to learn and they became a very good standard. Difficult, I think, of all the athletes, apart from Keith Darrell, currently athlete, Graham Clark possibly had the more talent than any athlete I've seen in the Isle of Man. He had his talent was just oozing with.
Well, until recently, he delivered the post to the offices where we're doing this interview.
That's right.
And I've told him this many times.
That's right, and it was very difficult. I mean, he used to win the races in the Isle of Man by minutes,
yes,
at times, and it was quite difficult for me to explain to his mum and dad when he used to go and run in like the national and the Lancashire championships and races across. And he would finish down halfway or even lower than that. That I explained to them that I had a word with Graham, and Graham, the only way he could improve is train harder. He was a bit suspect to injury, but he was just happy to train no more than what he did. And to be Ironman champion. Well, first of all, you can't. I told all the athletes that would involve me, Chris Quine, everybody, Dave Newton, them all, that that's a height that you can't beat. If you're champion of your country, you can't get any higher than that. You can go internationally higher, but Graham was just content to be Ironman champion. He wasn't prepared to put really heavy work in after that. I told all the athletes that the first target that you must aim at is to be champion of your country, no matter how small or how big. All athletes all over the world try and be the best they can in their country at certain events. But I think time marched on, and then, of course, tracks got better. They had the National Sports Centre track.
Yes.